In today's episode, Vadim returns to catch up with Andy Flack from Homeland Properties after a couple of years since working together on a video for Andy's company. They dive into the business of Timberland, carbon credits, and what to consider when buying land. With over 39 years of experience and consulting on more than 1 million acres of land sales, Andy shares valuable insights on how landowners can profit while preserving natural resources. Whether you're interested in sustainable forestry or making smart land investments, this episode has plenty of practical tips you won't want to miss.
Looks like we're arriving here to you call it the bunkhouse. Excited to see this.
Well, welcome back to Grounded, the Homeland Properties podcast. So today we're featuring Vadim Kovalev with Koval. Vadim, his company helps grow businesses in the wood world. Vadim was produced our company video for Homeland Properties, a timeless video that we very much appreciate and think highly of. Hopefully we'll do another one of those one of these days. But for today, we want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and then what you do.
Be happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
Excited
to collaborate and join you on your podcast.
Exactly.
Well, my name is Vadim. Like you mentioned, I go by V, just simpler that way. The company I founded years ago is called Koval. And you asked me earlier, what does that mean? It's the same root in the Slavic language. You have the blacksmith. And smith specifically is the same as Koval. So kavat in the Slavic language, Ukrainian language, is smith. So the thought was, we're smithing things in the digital realm. To back up a little bit, my parents immigrated to the States when I was 4 or 5 years old. I grew up in the Northwest, fell in love with nature, with the trees, and was raised in the Northwest. So I learned how to, I went to kindergarten, I went to public education, but parallel to that, I was also getting educated in how to read, write, and speak Russian. So my family escaped communism. My grandfather served jail time in the gulags during Stalin time for, being a believer. And so, my parents were persecuted all the way through the 90s, so they escaped. And so with the context that I have, Andy, man, I wouldn't be where I am today without the Lord. And so I'm out there, He's given me the opportunities, opening the doors. So I want to get out there and share that God is good and wood is good. That's my message.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit about, what you've been doing lately and why are you in Texas right now?
Why am I in Texas? Listen, I got a lot of friends in Texas. So over the weekend, I was hanging out with your friend, Kelvin, and the whole
Steely Lumber Company.
Steely Lumber Company, yeah. That's it. So we did a production for Steely Lumber Company, and that's, I believe, how we met.
That's correct.
And so, Kelvin Steely has a wealth of knowledge about lumber and just his story, man. So I was over there just fascinated with him years ago when I met the guy. And so just was able to spend some time with him. Chris and Emily DiMiliano are our friends as well. Chris today is a general manager over the Steely Lumber Company. The other reason I was in Texas was I was up in Dallas interviewing these guys who are PhDs and scientists who are studying, all kinds of the nature on the planet Earth. Geologists and biologists and guys who are physicists, PhDs that are going super deep and following the evidence. I would like to say that they're super open-minded, meaning they look at the evidence and don't start with the premise of God can't exist and let's go interpret the evidence, which leads to all kinds of crazy stuff. But they're like, hold on a second, let's look at the evidence. Is the Bible truly true? And I asked them point blank after all this research and stuff in Dallas, I was like, guys, is there anything that, you've seen in geology all over the globe that disproves anything that's in the Bible? And they say, no, we haven't found. And they're going really deep, Andy. So you should definitely check out my friends at ICR. It's the Institute of Creation Research.
Yeah, you told me about that. I'm looking forward to looking into that some more. That's very interesting. Well, so how we found you, of course, you said you did a production for Steely Lumber Company and I've seen, other productions that you've done for in the wood industry, especially in the sawmills and things like that. So because our company is heavily based in East Texas, and we deal a lot in forest land, and we're involved in conservation and preservation of the forests, and big advocates and supporters of the Texas Forestry Association and other landowner associations like Southwest Piney Woods Landowner Association. And in our business, we're dealing with a lot of timberland sales and real estate, and then we also sell those lands from these big companies that own them to individuals that want to have their own personal forest. So that's how you and I overlap in terms of the wood business. Like you said, God is good, wood is good, right? So that's how we came together, and we've seen some of your other productions. Tell us a little bit more about maybe a couple of the interesting ones you've done that are based on forestry.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Well, let's start right there with Steely Lumber Company. I think that was an incredible opportunity for us to collaborate with Steely Lumber Company. They've got multiple businesses. Sure, they've got the sawmill, but your friend Kelvin is involved in logging, and that was his background, and forestry, and then the sawmill, of course, and taking all those residuals and making sure that nothing goes to waste.
That's correct.
They've got a pellet plant. They have a landscaping company, all those other things. So companies come to us and they say, hey, Vadim, you go around the world and you work with two groups of companies. Specifically, if we put them into two buckets, the first bucket is all companies who are involved in the wood products supply chain. It could be all the way upstream to land and forest management. Then you've got harvesting, logging operations. Then you go into a sawmill, typical. And then from sawmill, there's a lot of value streams. You've got, folks, of course, lumber for homes. You've got pulp and paper everybody uses toilet paper. So what I mean? Wood is just everywhere, and wood products. And then there's a lot of value streams, furniture and all kinds of cool things. And then so that's the wood products manufacturing companies, I call them. Right below them is a whole network of companies that I used to work for. So my background is engineering. I was a very technical guy. I went around the globe, Andy, and my job was to help these companies optimize their production. So what that means is I was part of the team who invented a 3D scanner, and there's a patent. I'm listed as the main inventor on this patent. And so the cool thing is I got to be very deep, very technical with sawmills and wood products manufacturing companies across the globe. The way I like to position myself is, look, if you zoom way out and you look at the earth, wherever there's green on the planet, those are probably trees, and there's people there taking the forest, harvesting, and using it to make, lumber, to make construction materials, and furniture, and etc. But also all kinds of different things, right? So that's a little bit about if you zoom way out. But if you really get back to it, a great example of what we've done is your friends at Steely Lumber Company. I'm really proud of that production, really proud of what they do. This is close to me, close to my heart. And so what I'm about to say comes really truly from my heart. I feel like the world's got it kind of wrong. A lot of people out there see a log truck coming by the highway. They think of guys like Kelvin and Steely Lumber. Hey, these guys are the ones that are deforesting the planet. Well, it's like, and so there's a logical fallacy that people make, which is a tree, when it stands, is, giving off oxygen and providing shade and natural habitat to all these critters, which is true. And then the logical fallacy is, well, if you cut that tree and it falls, that's a bad thing. And I could get into all the weeds of all that, but it doesn't stop there. This is a crop. And you can listen to Kelvin talk and all these guys. So that's really what drives me, is that we're on a mission. Our business it's really a simple mission. It's to improve the lives of the people in the wood industry globally.
Correct. Well, we're cutting trees, but we're planting more than we're cutting. And we've gone, more to a paperless society. Thank God we need toilet paper and paper towels.
COVID showed that, right?
we don't need as many notebooks as we used to. So we are But our wood our wood baskets are shrinking, from urbanization and things like that. So it takes people like yourself, us, to be conscientious of the preservation and conservation of the wood business and trees. And so what you stated as far as trying to educate the public on the positive aspect of growing trees, harvesting and growing trees. I mean, you have to harvest them at some point because they increase, and at some point they increase at a decreasing rate and they die. So we're using God's resources that He gave us to benefit ourselves, our society, our communities, through jobs, through products, through the natural resources that trees provide. And I think what you do, helping educate the public through your productions and through your research and gathering data is very important. So before we go any further, let's tell everybody where they can see some of the productions that you do.
Yeah, please visit our website, or better yet, find a lot of the content that I go around the world and capture is on our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and search Wood World.
Wood World.
Wood World Podcast.
And so what is your website? Is it just Koval.com?
Kovaldigital.com.
Kovaldigital.com. Okay, good. Sure.
And for me, it's very personal and very deep. Again, I told you about my folks escaped communism, and I'm a believer. I can state that openly and honestly right here. And so what I'm driven by is we've got a purpose. We don't just aimlessly walk around planet Earth. And so my purpose stems from actually the first book of the Bible. Can I read you the verse?
Sure.
So the first book of the Bible is Genesis. And right there, when God creates the earth, He says, I'll show it to you here. So we're in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, keyword subdue. In context, it says, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish, and on it goes. But the word subdue, genuinely, I think let me start with what it doesn't mean. I like to share the message of the word subdue because it doesn't mean to go and subdue the earth and exploit the earth. I was just in Africa. Brazil is a lot of places. I haven't been to Brazil yet, but I'm just saying there's a lot of places around the world where truly bad things are happening. There's bad players. But we're not called to exploit the earth.
Correct.
We're also in this, so we're not to exploit, which subdue is not to exploit, and subdue is also not to idolize creation. We're not supposed to make an idol out of the tree that's standing there, and I feel like that's the other opposite extreme. What is subdue? Well, in my interpretation is quite simple. To subdue means to be a good steward of the natural resources,
right,
not just trees. And okay, what does that mean? Subdue the earth. It's very practical and very simple. In my mind, it means to use and to take care of the natural resource.
Correct.
So we are to plant more and all of that, and to take care of the land, the tracts that you're working with directly. But we're also called to use and to make lumber and furniture and homes and everything else that we're doing. So we're to subdue the earth.
Agreed.
Simple.
It is. If it were that simple.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it isn't. Bible's not all that complicated if you really look at it.
That's correct. It's not. It's straightforward.
I love this industry. I love the people of this industry, Andy, and that's why I think that you and I are, we've got a gap in age, but I feel like you're my friend. Kelvin, I feel like he's my friend.
Sure.
And why is because we align on wood is good, God is good. And these are key tenets, key principles that I go around the world and I talk about openly. Why is wood good? Well, okay, we could get into that. You know what I mean? Like we talked about lumber and wood products and wood resources. But, it all starts way upstream in the forest. And that's something that you're really knowledgeable about. So can I ask you a little bit to also share from your perspective, Andy, what do you do? What is Homeland Properties? Because I want to also share this episode on our channels.
Yeah, sure.
In this collaboration.
Yeah, so as we've talked before, I mean, Homeland Properties is a fairly small real estate company based in Huntsville, Texas.
Okay.
We're on the western edge of the wood basket in Texas, but this wood basket travels, goes all the way to Florida. I mean, this is where it starts, right here in Huntsville, Texas, and travels east all the way to Florida. So we have gained a foothold in the market with a lot of the large timberland owners, 3 to 4 million acres just in East Texas. And those timberland owners view their portfolio of lands, if you will, as strategic for growing forest products or possibly non-strategic. You know, if, sometimes it's hard to manage a 20-acre tract that's off by itself. So they'll categorize those forest lands, and then they'll decide whether it's best to continue that in forest production or to sell it and maybe use that money to lower their basis in the remainder of what they own, or buy other lands that are more strategic for growing wood. So that's when we come in. They hire us to sell those properties that are non-strategic for forestry anymore, but most of the time they still have trees, and they can be used for forestry by another owner down the road, and that's where we come in. So we work about 40 counties in East Texas, which pretty much carries us to the Red River, which is the northern border of Texas, to the Gulf of Mexico, all the way to Louisiana. We're branching out into Oklahoma now and probably Louisiana in the next year. So we've been very successful in what we do and how we present our platforms for marketing and selling those properties. So our production has been successful enough that there's demand for our company to help these larger timberland owners and also private owners. We work for them too, to dispose of those properties. And we're knowledgeable in forestry because that's the product that we deal in the most. Not that we don't sell other properties, pasture land, recreational lands, residential lands as well, but the bulk of what we've done over the last 20 to 25 years has been in the forest land industry. And so we've got about 17 agents, 6 full-time staff people, and that's what we do every day.
I love it.
So,
Andy, I have a personal question for you.
Yes, sir.
Why do you do what you do?
It's my passion that I'm in my 40th year now in the real estate business, and it's just a passion that I enjoy doing. I started this when I got out of college, and I love working for myself. We have a very good atmosphere at our company. We operate like a big family. Everybody gets along, and we work well together, and it's enjoyable to go to work every day. I'm out in the field quite a bit, so office some and the field some. I think it's a good blend, and I just enjoy what I do. It's a passion. I'm very fortunate, very blessed. How'd
you get into it, can I ask?
Well, so when I was in college trying to figure out what I was going to do when I got out, I figured out I could get my real estate license while I was in college, sort of a dual credit. They didn't really have that terminology back then, but so that's what I did. And I took the courses while I was in college that went towards my degree and also went towards me qualifying for a real estate license. So I got my license when I was in college. Wasn't using it till I got out of college. And it was in 1984. The markets were not good, and the job markets were not good, so trying to find a job was difficult, and I had an opportunity come up where I could join a real estate company. And at the time I was single and not much responsibility, no kids, and so I thought, well, I'll give this a try, and here I am.
Here you are. Well, that's a quick fast forward to today, but I got you. 1984. That's
Yes.
when you started.
That's right.
So was it called Homeland Properties always?
No, I worked for another company for about 5 years, and then my partner and I, John Paul Lampson, and I branched out on our own in 1990 and started Homeland Properties at the time. And there wasn't a lot of land to sell in East Texas in the 90s. The 90s was an era of a lot of bank failures and foreclosures from the high interest rates and from the 80s. And so we worked hard in that industry and did pretty well. And then the year 2000 came, and Champion merged with International Paper. International Paper acquired 1 million acres from Champion and decided they were going to dispose of that to free up capital. And so when International Paper did that, we went to work for them as a subcontract broker and did a lot of that work. And then Louisiana Pacific and Temple Inland followed in the next few years, each with another 1 million acres each. So there's about 3 million acres that traded hands between, say, somewhere around 2000 to 2003 or 4. And so there's been a trickle down from since then with the real estate investment trusts and the TIMOs, which are Timberland Investment Management Organizations, that have acquired those lands and continue to operate and manage them. And so it's been the big Texas land rush ever since about 2000, especially in East Texas.
East Texas land rush.
Yes, that's what I would say.
That's so cool.
And it's still going.
And a lot of these, you call them tracts, right?
Well, yeah, a piece of property is a tract of land. Some people would call it a lot.
You're selling land.
Correct.
They're called tracts.
Yeah, so you might have a 10-acre tract, or you might have a 100-acre tract, or you might have a 1,000-acre tract.
Okay.
So it's just a terminology for, some people might call them lots.
Okay.
A lot of land would be, 10 acres would be a lot, 10-acre lot, or a 100-acre lot.
So what's the smallest lot you've ever sold?
Oh, I mean, we'll sell stuff, a tenth, 2/10 of an acre. I mean, it depends. We do some commercial work, so some of those properties get pretty fragmented. But yeah, we've sold properties less than 1 acre, and the largest property or transaction we've ever done was a 54,000 acre property that we sold back in 2006. But that's not, a big block like that's really not uncommon, or a package is not that uncommon to trade in the forest industry, not necessarily East Texas, but all across the United States in forest lands. So,
and that's what that was? It was forest lands?
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
Also related to forestry and logging and sawmilling?
Yeah, and some of it's still being used for that.
Is that right?
Correct.
Do you know much about how the land, like after the transaction or before the transaction, like how was land used here in your region? Like, I know you were saying logging, but can you give us a little bit of a taste of how the trees are ready to be harvested, or just a high level? Like, are these tracts already harvested, like you said, or are they doing any planting after they buy them? Like, what do people usually use land for? In the commercial space, we'll get.
Yeah, so in the commercial space, I would say that, it's used for forestry, and most of in a production forest, they used to do more of a management style, more of a natural growth. I mean, southern yellow pine is indigenous to this area, so back in the day, I guess that they would do more of just a natural management style, where they would go in and cut the bigger trees out and maybe leave some seed trees to let the forest reseed itself or reforest itself. But somewhere in probably early 80s, the industry went to a more production style where they developed stands within a plot of land. So if you had 1,000 acres, you might have 10 100-acre stands within that 1,000 acres, and then they would go in and clear cut a 100-acre stand and replant it. So many trees to the acre, might be 400 to 600 seedlings to an acre.
Say that again. That's interesting.
I said it might be 400 to 600. So
400 to 600 seedlings
to an acre. Depends on the site. There's many factors to determine how many seedlings you plant, but they allow for mortality, etc., as that forest grows. So then they might not cut that. They might not cut the whole 1,000 acres at one time, but they'll cut those stands.
Yeah.
So you end up with a rotation of ages, for instance, in that 1,000 acres.
Yeah.
You might have you've got 10 stands, so you might have one stand that's a year old, the next one might be 2. I mean, it staggers.
Yeah.
So that when that rotation gets to the end, so a typical rotation is 25 years, but that can be shorter, it can be longer depending on soils, etc.
Yeah.
But just use 25 years for generalities, but those are the rotation, the time, and then they'll grow it out to 25 years and cut it and start over again.
Yeah. And there's some thinnings in between.
There's thinnings in between, certainly. And 15 years generally is the first thinning, and then 20 years after that. Cut for a second. I want to tell those guys they weren't even supposed to be here this morning. They were supposed to wait because I told Brooke we were doing this at 10.
Okay.
They're gonna have to wait at least 30 minutes.
Okay.
Tell them to go grab some lunch.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, good. No, that's very interesting to me. The density of seedlings per acre is what you were talking about, and it gets up to a 25-year rotation. Andy, I'm not trying to pinpoint you on specific data.
If you do want to get more into that, you need to get with a consulting forester.
100%.
Because I want to be very general, because I'm not a consulting forester.
I understand, but you're giving me a good example.
I don't want my consulting forester audience to get upset with me.
No problem. No. And no, I'm just trying to get a general lay of the land in this region.
Sure.
And you've been in contact with, I don't need to go super deep with one person, just high-level information.
I'm a forester on the hoof. I just learned it on the hoof. Kelvin taught me a lot.
Wow. So, what's your relationship with Kelvin? How do you guys know each other?
Well, we met in 1993, I think. His wife.
Deanne.
Yeah, Deanne. Her parents were selling a home in New Waverly and called me to help them sell that home. And I met Deanne, and then in developing that relationship, she introduced me to Kelvin. And so 30 years later now, I helped him, he owns about 15,000 acres. And I helped him buy most of that over that time frame, over 30 years.
So you guys built a personal friendship?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, it was a business relationship, but more importantly, it's a friendship.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I see that all the time, Andy. Like, I generally love to build friendships with the guys in this industry, I feel like it's all built on relationships, really.
Well, that's everything. Any type of business you're doing is building relationships. So that's what I tell my agents when they're working with clients is the first thing you got to do is build a relationship. That's the first thing you have to do.
Hey, I'm a young guy. I'd like to hear a little bit about how do you do that? What do I need to do as a young guy to build relationships?
Well, the first thing you got to do is be nice, be kind, be respectful of other people, and be respectful of their opinions, be respectful of their how they feel, what they think about, what their questions. A lot of that's just communication. Communication's huge. So be in contact, be receptive to other people.
I love that. Thank you. And to back up a little bit, you were giving me a little bit of the commercial side of tracts of land that you sell. I'm also curious, do people buy it for private use?
Well, they do. Private users, normally buy properties for recreation, someplace to get away, take their family. Maybe they want to build a lake, a pond. Maybe they want to build a house, a camp house, something like we're sitting in. Get away on the weekend. We saw a big example of that during COVID. Our interest in sales during COVID were up 300%. People realized that, hey, we're trapped here in this city and we might need to get out. We might need resources that we can use on our own. Maybe we need to feed ourselves some way. So we saw a lot of people buying land. I mean, it's smaller tracts, 5, 10, 15, 20 acre tracts, 30, 50. And that interest shot up incredibly during COVID. So it was about a 1.5 to 2 year period where the market was really good for us because of that. So
is it leveled off now?
It has leveled off. We're back, to a level, say 2018, somewhere 19
Sure.
level.
Sure.
Interest rates and inflation have certainly, buffered that somewhat. This is election year. Things are always kind of static during the election year. Not a whole lot increases or decreases in
Sure.
things, but.
So I have a personal question.
Mhm.
What if I wanted to get a tract of land?
Sure.
What's I'm not going to hold you to it, but what's average price per acre, or what am I looking at? Like what goes into identifying a piece of land? I genuinely am interested, and it'd be a dream for me to have a private piece of land, call it Texas or somewhere in the South.
Right.
I live in Florida, but if let's say we wanted to get some land with my wife and for the kids, and I was going to get a portable sawmill and just be out there in the land, build a cabin, that kind of thing. Like, what are we looking at price wise? I mean, before even price, like what are the parameters that go into finding a good tract of land? If I said, Andy, let's go find me a tract of land.
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is decide: do you want something wooded,
Yes.
or do you want something open? Yeah, I would probably think you'd want something wooded.
I love them trees, man.
So then once you know that, okay, well, there's a big area to cover. So where do you want to be in proximity to somewhere else? I mean, do you want to be close enough to an airport? Do you want to be an hour from Houston or 2 hours from Houston? I mean, these are some things that are real important to start with. But it does relate to price. So if you're an hour from Houston, you got one price. If you're 2 hours from Houston, you got another price. So that's a big factor. If do you want something more flat or level that you can possibly have part of it in farming or something? If you want to grow some crops or something on part of it,
Longhorn.
yeah.
Get
Well,
some
that's true
Longhorn.
too. I mean, so, or do you mind something that's really hilly? I mean, we've got some pretty hilly land in East Texas that you can get involved in. So,
I want that tract that has the dinosaur fossils in it.
the dinosaur fossils, okay. Well,
Have you ever come across anything crazy like that?
I don't know
Fossils
about
or
dinosaur fossils? There's a lot of geological formations in East Texas that are interesting in terms of, some gypsum holes where they mine gypsum and things like that. There are some fossil areas. There's areas that have more arrowheads. I know you went arrowhead hunting this past weekend.
I
so-
have a
Right.
fossilized
Yeah.
wood arrowhead.
Yeah, that's right. So there's areas like that there's
Have
some
you
of
found
that.
those?
No, I'm not very good at finding them. I've found a few, but not like our friend.
Yeah.
So some people I think are better at finding than others.
I have another question. I remember talking to somebody from your team, in fact, when we were doing all that production and going out and seeing some of the tracks. I don't know if you know much about this, or can you just give me a high level on what is it that, like, if I buy a tract of land, you basically own the surface, but you don't own necessarily the mineral rights. I heard something about mineral rights. Or in Texas, you've got all kinds of resources underground. Can you
Correct.
shed a little bit of light on that?
Well, so a property or a tract of land has two different estates. You have the mineral estate and the surface estate. And so the mineral estate is that's below the surface. And in Texas, that's dominant. And the surface is servient to the mineral estate. So, yeah, if you buy a tract of land, like this table is your tract of land, you own the surface.
Yeah.
But if I own the minerals underneath this table, then I have the right to go on your surface to get to my minerals.
So you can have two different owners, one that owns the surface and one that owns underneath.
Well, that's very common. So most properties in East Texas,
Wow.
the minerals have been reserved prior to.
So you just buy the top. You
So
don't.
you're just buying the top.
How deep?
Well,
I mean, it's not really technical.
That's a good question. So there's been a lot of. I'm sure there's a legal answer to that. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm not looking for like a
So
specific legal.
you have the
reason.
rights to the water, which are subsurface,
Okay.
unless somebody reserved that water prior to you buying it.
It's
Then
kind of tricky, yeah.
it is. It
Okay.
gets very tricky. So those are all important things and factors that people need to understand when they're buying a tract of land.
And that was eye-opening for me when I think one of your guys took us out and we were filming some I remember it was plantation or something. It was like 100-acre tract. And then we're driving on this road and he was explaining to us how the road was built so that they can get access to the back of the property to put in a pipeline or something. Like, how does that work?
Well, so there again, the mineral owner has the right to access their minerals. And if that means that they want to put, for instance, if I own the minerals and you own the surface and I want to lease my minerals to an oil company, then I do that, and that oil company has the right to go on your surface to get to my minerals. So if they want to put a well site at the back of your property to get to my minerals, they have the right to build a road to get to that well site over your surface.
Are they going to compensate me as the owner of the surface?
Generally they do, and generally you also get the benefit of a nice road.
And minerals?
No.
Come on now.
You may be compensated for
It'd be nice to get a little percentage.
the well site.
A point or two.
Yeah, generally no.
Oh, man.
But it can, but generally no.
Okay.
There's some protections that we can get into about,
we don't.
surface protections. But,
Okay.
that's,
it's just very unique to this part of the world, I think.
It is somewhat unique to Texas. But there are factors that deal with surface and minerals in every state.
Oh, is that right?
Correct.
That's something I just learned.
Yeah.
I'm learning everywhere I go, Andy. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, that's good.
Sometimes they're kind of dumb questions, but...
No, there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Well, I like to ask those, the ones that are super basic, because then I see it from your perspective, and I see it from somebody else's perspective.
Well, sometimes we're so ingrained in what we do every day that we forget the simple questions. That people, we just often, and maybe in error, presume that people know more than they do about land. But that's what we're here for.
What's a common question you get asked when people are starting researching, talking with you, commercial or private? I mean, if you want to speak...
It's really the same questions you're asking now.
Okay.
So we know how to go through the factors that someone wants to know or needs to know when they start their land search. So a lot of times we tell people, well, start surfing the internet. Everybody kind of likes to do that. So go to some of your land pages. Go to our website.
What is it?
Homelandproperties.com, or you can go to homelandland.com.
Okay.
And we've got about 500 offerings right now across East Texas, but it gives you a good cross-section, if you will, of what's out there and what those prices are. So you'll start seeing, okay, well, if I want to be 2 hours from Houston, I'm going to pay somewhere in this range. But if I only want to be an hour from Houston, I'm going to pay somewhere in this range. And it's usually on a per acre basis. So if it's 100 acres and it's $5,000 an acre, then it's $500,000. So if you kind of think what your budget is, then you can start kind of backing into it. So maybe you say, well, my budget's $500,000, but I want this many acres.
Okay.
So because of that, I'm going to have to get 2 hours from Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So
it depends on what's your priorities,
right.
Yeah.
I want 100 acres, and here's my budget.
Okay.
Well, we can't get you that an hour from Houston, but we can get it for you 2 hours from Houston. So those are some of the things that we look at.
When people come to you, are they looking for an investment property usually, or is land a good investment, I guess?
Well, certainly it is in Texas. Our land prices have not gone down in the past 40 years. We've seen some leveling out, maybe some flat periods, which I think we've been in for the last 18 months. But there's still like 1,400 people a day moving to Texas. And as long as we have that demand...
Where are they coming from?
Everywhere. So
from within the country mostly, just relocating inside the state?
Yeah, I'd say mostly within the country. California's been a big one, of course. Everybody hears that.
Elon Musk showed up, right, recently? Did you sell him any land yet?
No,
not yet.
He hasn't come to East Texas yet.
Yeah. Elon, if you need some land, you got a guy. You got a connection to a guy.
That's right. So Midwest, East Coast. I mean, but a lot of people are that we sell to are coming, they're in the metropolitan areas, Houston, Dallas, places like that.
You have a good mix, or is it heavier towards like the investors side, or is it heavier towards the private? They're just trying to escape and do recreational things.
We have a pretty good mix. So you've got the investor developer buyers that are coming in and buying. Let's just use the 1,000 acres again.
Sure, yeah.
And they'll buy the 1,000 acres to divide up into 2 to 5 acre tracts, and then they'll sell those. Or
like for homes or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we've got, they may do something denser. They may buy the 1,000 acres and take a couple of hundred acres at a time and make it a subdivision of dense home development, 50-foot lots or 60-foot lots. So we've got that investor developer client that we sell quite a bit to.
Yeah.
And then we've got the buyers that say, well, I don't really want to be in a subdivision like that is that dense. So I'd rather have my own 5 acres or 10 acres out here kind of by myself. And so we've got those products as well.
You call them products.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's all a product.
I love it, Andy. Well, you definitely shine a light on land today. Anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share for our audience that are, in the wood world?
Well, I think we haven't talked much about carbon. You mentioned earlier about how pine trees put off oxygen, but they also store carbon.
That's what they do.
Carbon's a big topic in our markets right now. It's been somewhat of a question mark. There's also, you talked about, and so trees store carbon, so carbon sequestration is in trees, it's in all wood products, it's in lumber, but then also we talked about surface and subsurface. There's such a thing nowadays as what they call pore space, which pore space, that's P-O-R-E, is subsurface, and it's basically vacated fractures below the surface that they're pumping carbon into to store carbon, another form of carbon sequestration. So that's something new to the market. Solar is something that's affecting our wood basin, if you will. I mean, we're deforesting properties to go green with solar, but are we really going green when we're wiping out trees that may never grow there again? So it's a controversial topic. And will solar really be here for future generations, or would the government subsidies dry up and there won't be as much demand for solar? Or will the providers that buy the solar energy say, hey, we've got enough solar, we don't need any more solar? And then there's wind turbines. So there's another environmental issue with wind. We don't have many windmills in East Texas, but
funny enough, I was driving and I passed this giant semi with the blade on it, and there was a couple of lead and trailing vehicles.
There have been, certain counties in East Texas that have passed laws that they won't allow windmills in their county.
Is that right?
Yeah, but just because of the aesthetic view.
It's huge. The thing is humongous.
Well, and they, the whole landscape's covered with windmills when they do that. So there's some things like that you're probably going to run across.
Yeah.
And that we face as well.
Well, you mentioned carbon, and I think a buzzword that everybody talks about right now, and I've tried to understand it some. At a recent event, I was asking a guy about, but maybe you could shed some light on it, like from the field. What is carbon credits? There's a buzzword, carbon credits, and how does it work, or does it work? And
well, I'm not a carbon expert, but it's somewhat of a mitigation process. So if I have a property that has pine trees or any kind of trees, they'll even sequester carbon in pasture. But if I have a way to sequester that carbon, then there are companies that are paying me to hold that carbon, not cut my trees, okay? And so if I hold those trees for a certain time frame, then companies like Amazon and FedEx and Papa John's, you think about how much cardboard they use in order for them to put on their boxes that we are sustainable or green or whatever terminology they use, they're buying credits to offset how much carbon they're using up.
Or they're releasing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So does that make sense?
Kind of.
That's really
high level, I guess, kind
vague,
of.
but...
And I understand. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. I'm going to go dig deeper here, because what doesn't make sense to me is, as I was exploring it with somebody else, I'm going to go find a carbon expert, and maybe somebody can make a comment and connect me with a carbon expert. Like, I really want to understand it, and I don't get it. Like, how is it that they're trying to say that call it flying, I'm not going to say what they do, but let's say somebody's releasing carbon into the atmosphere. They want to offset that. Theoretically makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is they're paid to not cut trees down, which causes a whole bunch of other problems in the forest. So, such as wildfire. If you don't harvest, if you don't thin, if you don't manage. So I'm not sure on the nuances there, but I'll find somebody else to talk about. But you heard the word.
There are measures within storing carbon that you can still manage your forest.
Manage it, okay.
So. But yeah, you're exactly right. That's why they're buying those credits, because they use up so much carbon, or release so much carbon, that they're also as part of the new Green Deal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're doing. You basically said what they're doing, but I understand where you're coming from. But it's not a perfect world.
Yeah. Well, look, again, back to the basics. I believe we need to use the land and its resources, and help it. What did I say in the beginning? To use and to
subdue.
Well, subdue. I was defining the subdue where the words
right.
To use and to take care of the natural resource.
Right.
So the take care of part is the growing the trees and taking care of the land. There's a balance there, is my point.
You need to ask your guys in Dallas how they would deal with the atmosphere.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I'm tonight flying out to Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Heading to an event there, but I might just do that, because I think there's a lot there. The atmosphere, carbon, climate.
Are we really destroying our atmosphere?
Fair question.
Yeah.
I'm not a climate expert, but what I can say is I know people who are.
Yeah, you do.
So that's kind of the cool thing about me and what I'm doing is I just get access to folks like yourself, and you and I would have sat here anyways and just talked about it just because, but how simple it is to throw in a couple little microphones and have this conversation and be more transparent. See, I think that there's a bad rap about land and land use and trees use and sawmilling and all that, just because nobody's willing to get out there and talk about it. And I'm okay with getting the haters on the internet hating on me. Like, fine, comment on my posts.
Yeah.
I don't want your brand to get tarnished, but please call me out on whatever you think I said that isn't right. And then I want them to call me out, and then I'll go. I'm not the one going to be trying to fight back or whatever. I just go find the right expert.
We feel the same way. I mean, I'm not worried about that either. We want people to be educated.
That's it.
We want them to listen to these comments, and understand the topics that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If they're a landowner or want to buy land, they need to know these things.
Sure.
They need to be aware of them, and we can help them get those answers. We may not have all the answers, but we can help them get them.
I have a question. How does one buy land and then make money from it? Like, how is land truly an investment?
Well, it depends on what you're going to do, but let's just use the forest asset class.
Yeah.
So, in order to really make any money with forestry, you have to have a certain scale. It takes a little bit of the size to make money. Now, if you buy a 50-acre tract of pine trees that are 20 years old, you can go cut those and you can get income from them. But essentially, you may have paid for that when you bought the property, so you're getting some of your money back. But in order to make money again, you're going to have to do something different with that piece of property, or you can replant, but understand that your rotation, again, is 25 years, and your first cutting or thinning might be from 13 to 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And that first cutting is your smaller trees. It's a management cutting is what it is. You're not going to really make a whole lot. It's a pulpwood thinning. You're probably not going to make much money, but it's going to help the residual trees grow faster. Or you could clear that 50 acres from pine trees and go into something else, cattle, hay, crops of some sort.
Okay.
In Texas, the best way to make money on it is buy it and hold it.
Really? Okay.
Because typically your investment in a tract of land has been marginally 5 to 6% per year increase just in appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you can get the appreciation from the land and you can also get appreciation from pine trees growing, then you've kind of doubled down. So pine trees, they essentially will say, grow at a nominal rate of somewhere between 4 and 6% per year. So if you got a seedling that's this tall in year one, but it's double that in year two, well, it's growing 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no market for that tree. I mean, unless you do some sort of ornamental,
Yeah.
So then in year three, it grows a percentage exponentially higher. But over the life of that rotation, that average comes into that 4 to 6% per year. You follow me?
Yep.
Okay. So that's where that number comes from.
I've always thought just that's why I'm trying to get out there and learn more and just get more educated on it. But I just thought like you buy a piece of land, and I got some real estate myself, but like just to dumb it down, like I guess you buy a piece of land, appreciates because urbanization, people are moving a little bit further away from the developed areas, and then that land goes up in value, and then you sell it back to developers, and then you made your difference.
That's correct.
You bought it cheaper, you sell it higher. There's a delta.
That's the best way to make money in land.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean it is. Then
So,
you take your money from your profit and go buy something else. Go buy another tract.
Seems simple to
Try
me.
to do it again.
Yeah.
It does. It is simple. The way
Off
we
camera, we're
explain
going to have to start talking about that, me and you.
it doesn't always work that way perfectly in a perfect world, but
Sure. Well, we're simplifying here just to make sure I can keep the train of thought.
understood.
Well, we talked about a lot of things. Unless there's something else you wanted to share, can you share with our audience what's one thing that you think we talked about educating the general public. What's one thing that you'd like to educate the general public about and all these topics that we've talked about? Is there something where you can bring it together for us?
Well, I think the best thing to do is get experts to work for you. Get the people that know what they're doing to work for you. So if that's us, if that's a forester that you need, and to get advice from in terms of what your trees are doing or what you need to do, I would call the experts. Don't try to do things so much yourself. There's a lot of free advice out there too. I mean, the Texas Forest Service is a resource here in Texas. The USDA has got a lot of resources that landowners can get free advice from. But just do your research, do your homework.
What's a common fault? Like if somebody doesn't, are they potentially losing some value somewhere or making a mistake?
I mean, there's some people for instance, try to burn on their own. Well, that's dangerous for one thing, and then you could end up burning up more than just your property. So there's
that's good advice.
Things like be careful when you're selling trees. So I would use a consulting forester to sell my timber. Don't sell straight to a logger. That's not a good practice. It's not that every logger, there's bad apples not in everything. So just get the right advice, talk to the right people, and don't make a mistake.
Can those people that are interested call you to get
Sure.
advice on if it's you, or you can at least point them in the right direction?
We certainly can. We do it every day.
I love it. Well, that answered a lot of my questions.
Well, mine too. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
for being here today.
Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for the opportunity.